Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi like my father before me. Today we're going to be having a look at the Star Wars Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker 1/6 scale collectible figure. The product code for this is MMS429. Let's grab the tape measure to figure out how tall Luke Skywalker stands. He is roughly 11 3/4 of an inch in height. He gets a pretty cool display base, nothing too cool or interesting about the shape. It's just a straight rectangular display base with Star Wars Luke Skywalker on the front. What's interesting though is what you can do with the display base, as it has various different options. Currently what is sporting right now is the flooring of the Emperor's throne room near the end of the movie, where Luke has been brought into the throne room to, of course, meet with Emperor Palpatine, and the battle with Vader, the final battle with Vader, ensues. Really neat looking floorboard. It does have some recessed lines and some little details in there as well. And there's a couple of slots on the back. Now, we're going to go ahead and pop the base off. Actually, we don't really technically need to do that just yet, as it does also contain, the figure comes included with some of the canisters. Now initially when I did the unboxing of this figure, by the way, what I'm doing right now is there's two grooves and or slots, and then there's these two T-shaped pegs. What I'm doing is I'm just lining those slots to the pegs, and then once those are in place, I'm just pushing them down just like that until this is completely flushed. Here again, when I did the unboxing of this, I thought this was the area in which Luke surrenders, and it was the headquarters area on Endor. It turns out actually this, if we're looking at it this way, the elevator would be right here for the Emperor's throne room, and then you've got railings on either side, and then the rampway. These would be on the side, and these would essentially be what Luke is leaning against eventually when he's being electrocuted. It does look good, and it adds a little bit extra oomph to it. If you display the figure without the Jedi robe tunic, and you just display him with the black outfit, I'll likely display him like this. However, Hot Toys does give you a couple of options via these two little extra cardboard They're about the thickness of an index card or cue card, if you've ever had a cue card. There is a slight texturing to it. This feels like a very fine or high-grade, high-numbered, like sandpaper. This essentially feels the exact same way, so it's got a little bit of texturing happening to it. So we're going to go ahead and take the base off here, just simply pop it reversed to what we did to put it on. And sadly, we have to take this off. And I say sadly because I don't like taking this off and adding it repeatedly. It's just wearing away the... It's not wearing it to the point that it's going to break, but there's like little tabs here that I do worry that eventually will break if I keep pulling this off, putting it back on. But it comes with a couple of variations. One is the desert area of Tatooine. Now, the only thing I can think of as Luke's, time frame within Return of the Jedi, he's never really on the sands specifically of Tatooine, unless you're thinking of just before he's entering the palace of Jabba the Hutt, which Jabba the Hutt would be located on the Dune Sea of Tatooine, and that you could theoretically have that as the sand area just before he enters into the doorway. And then, of course, you would have him with the Jedi robe. So we can go ahead and add this, like so. And you've got this. Now, this does shift a little bit. Well, actually, it shifts considerably. There's nothing really holding it in place other than just the back adjustable neck here. That's the only thing that's really keeping it in place. I mean, it does effectively look good if you wanted to display Luke again necessarily with this look. I think before we get into the other card, maybe we'll fittingly dress Luke fittingly appropriately to this display base option here. Don't worry, we're going to look at the figure in a second. I just want to show you the robe in which Luke is. I'm trying to do this by sequence in which he appears in the movie. Comes with the Jedi robe, or just a hermit's robe that he wears over top of him when he's entering into Jabba's palace. To get that effectively done on Luke, simply just a case there. It's sewn right up the middle. In fact, the stitching keeping it together is almost looking as if it's separating from itself, so be very careful with that. And then you would just want to drape it over his shoulders and then fit it over his head. That's really it. And then you can just adjust accordingly, get that kind of fixed around his shoulders. And the cloak, while the actual cloak itself will just drape on him, there is at least a wire frame. It seems a very small wire, yes, but enough of a wire that you can adjust the head, or at the very least the opening of the hood, accordingly, so it can hide Master Luke's head here. Again, you just want to adjust it like so. Then you can go ahead and take the figure and put him on the display base. And you can have him on, at very least, the card that has the Tatooine sand. Now, this definitely would be a case of, I appreciate the accessory, but never would ever display Luke with the hood, with the cloak on. I mean, it does look good. And, if you could entertain the idea of having Luke in this look if you had more than one Luke's. But ultimately, for how cool he does look with his lightsaber, and of course when we take the tunic off and what have you, I would never ever display him with it, but I do give Hot Toys credit for including it with the figure itself. By the way, to the material, it feels almost like a velour or suede material, like a faux suede. It hangs relatively well on Luke's shoulders and cascades its way out here. Yeah, the robe's definitely got a nice feel to it, and a natural drape to it as well. It creates the creases. Try not to drop the figure in the process. It does create the creases essentially where you would need them to fall, and they do overlap quite nicely to one another. Now, depending on how you want to display the figure, which you can also do too, I'm bringing things into the mix here that we would normally look at near the end of this review, but you can go ahead and just unpeg his one hand very carefully from the peg. There we go. And you can replace it with the Jedi Hand. And you can kind of bring this up here. Because in the beginning, he sort of ushers away the guards as he's walking through the doorway here. And again, you can recreate that using the robe and the supplied hand. with a simple swap of Luke's hands. Let's go ahead and change out the card here. We're going to pop the base off once again, or the adjustable neck. I'm going to slide this card off, and we're going to replace it with Jabba's Palace card. Now, I didn't think this looked like Jabba's Palace, but then again, looking at a few shots, also on Sideshow Collectibles, they also have Luke displayed like this with the cloak on this base. So we're going to go ahead and treat that as the Jabba's Palace insert card. Again, you got some nice detailing on there. Nothing is really raised to it. It does have a slight coarse sandpaper feel to it. And I've gone ahead and changed Luke's hands. Now these are the hands sort of if he's just wanting to hold his hands over top of one another, like he does in Jabba's Palace when he's negotiating with the Hutt. So we can go ahead and just adjust the cloak. And there you've got Luke making a deal with Jabba. Now this, the cloak, at least the very hood part of the cloak, it's supposed to sit a little flush, a little more fitted on the sides. That's a little harder to accomplish. Again, you can adjust it just right. At least you've got the little wire frames to kind of assist you with that. Because really what I want to do is I want to have the hood like this, exactly the way it is in the movie. It does pull off a rather successful look. Again, this is not likely how I'm going to be displaying Luke, but it does give you options for how you can display him because Hot Toys does give you the necessary tools to work with. Again, I like the feel of the cloak. It does, as best as I could describe it, does sort of feel like a faux suede. It's got a nice coloring to it. The coloring is also very accurate to the way it appears in the movie. Okay, so I've gone ahead and just taken the robe off Luke, giving him the defaulted look that he gets out of packaging. So looking at him, what he essentially has is the black long sleeve top with the adjustable collar that you can peel that back for the later look for Luke Skywalker. Black trunks, a faux leather black boot on both sides with flat plastic soles. And then over top of that, he's got the Jedi tunic or Jedi, vested shirt that he wears over top of that. And then he's got his belt. The belt has a loop and it has a hook. The hook supports the lightsaber. Still yet to really find out what the loop is for, unless it carries over to something else he's going to get later into the, the other releases from Hot Toys. Both of these, by the way, are Velcroed. So there's a Velcro on the belt, allows you to remove the belt, and then there's a Velcro on the belt portion of this, the tunic, that you can then take off. Before we do that, though, I know we're spending a lot of time looking at everything else but his face. Let's go ahead and look at Luke Skywalker's face here. Certainly a topic of debate when I first had a look at this guy in the unboxing. I think for the most part it does look like Luke Skywalker, although something seems drastically off here. I tried to go back and look at the source material. I get where they were going with, but ultimately the lower end of the face, something seems like it doesn't quite match to me. I tend to do this a lot of times. If I cover my thumb over top of his face, at least the lower half of his face, this part does look accurate to Luke. However, there's something that doesn't seem right here. I feel like this is maybe overly puffy around his lower lip. That's causing him to almost look almost like a salamander. He's almost got like a little fish face happening here. The paint is exceptionally done well. These are hand-painted pieces. But again, I do feel like something is slightly not working in this area here that's throwing off the figure. From certain sides, it does definitely look like Luke Skywalker. I think face forward, though, something seems drastically off. As for his hair sculpt, it's very nicely done. I feel like it could be a little bit lighter in the movie itself. And it is removable. I'm still not certain what it's removable for. Few have mentioned the fact that this could be maybe a swappable option if they eventually release like a speeder bike Luke. But again, that would argue the point if this is removable to the fact that you could add a helmet to Luke Skywalker. I'm certain they're probably going to release a speeder bike Luke in full Endor gear. Why would you then have the option to replace the head on this Luke unless he had to come with that outfit, which he doesn't come with? Doesn't really make much sense to me. Unless later on, additional releases, maybe Darth Vader or Palpatine from the Return of the Jedi, maybe there will be an additional hairpiece that could give him a more wet look as he's near the end of the movie. It could also give him the slightly blowing hair when he's on the Jedi, or on Jabba's desert skiff. But I'm not really, again, sure why this has to remove. There's no logical reasoning, at least from the standpoint of picking this figure up solely on his own. Again, maybe if the long-term intent is that this is going to be a swappable option, kind of like bonus items that we've seen other companies do. Maybe bonus items with other figures, the extra accessories then you can mix and match with Luke Skywalker here. By the way, it is a magnet attachment, so you got a magnet plate here, and or a metal plate, I guess, here, and a magnet here. And they attach just one. You have to kind of get it around his ears, though, and it fits perfectly in place. Now, to get all this stuff removed, we're going to go ahead and flip it around to the back. We're just going to unvelcro his belt. That can come off. Then we're going to go ahead and take the Velcro off on this belt portion, which is on this side. I always keep forgetting which side it's on. It's on this side. Just pull that off. And then we're going to take the belt off. Then we can go ahead and just slide this down the sleeves. It may help just a little bit to bring the arms back a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and slide the sleeves off. And then we're going to put this to the side. Obviously this looks a little vacant, so we're going to go ahead and then grab the belt once again. You'll see that there's Velcro on the front, and then on the back is where we're going to loop it. So on the inside of the belt, you've got Velcro attaching there, so it gives you a nice secure fit. Gonna line that up, move the arms out of the way, and then we're just going to reattach the belt via the Velcro, and it does a pretty good job of staying in place. And there you've got Luke Skywalker then in the final scene, or near the end of the movie, not only where he battles Darth Vader, but also Palpatine as well. Of course, one thing that's missing as well is that this does open, as it does in the movie. I worry a little bit about this creating a permanent crease. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I have to admit, though, like looking at Luke Skywalker, his legs seem lanky, but accurate to Luke in the movie. But I have to admit that they've added all this additional padding to his upper torso. It doesn't look as bad now that you've got him in this look, but certainly when you incorporate the additional tunic over top of it, or the vest over top of that, it does make him look a little on the puffy side, especially up here. His neck seems almost to get lost by all this additional padding that's up here. If they had only just brought this down a slight bit, made his neck look a little bit longer in the process, because it ultimately looks like his neck gets lost amongst the mix of his torso here. I feel like, again, this could have been reduced a little bit in the amount of padding that they've added to it. I don't even know if they've added the padding to his torso, or it's simply just the extra cushioning that they've added to the outfit here, the full body outfit that he's wearing. Even though I do feel that he does have unnecessary amounts of padding, though, the stitch work is done exceptionally well on the front section here. And again, you've got the white interior that you can fold back. Probably that's going to be how I'm going to display the Luke. Got some nice stitch work around the sleeve area. You can never fault Hot Toys for the level of care that they put into the seam work of their actual costumes, and Luke here is no exception. I do feel like the boots feel a little on the flimsy side, especially up here. It's a very, very thin material. I don't feel as if, well, perhaps, excessive bending of the feet around the ankle area may start developing a little slice or wear area on that, so I probably wouldn't be doing that too often. Luke gets his trusty lightsaber as one of his accessories. You'll see that there is a little loop here in which you can loop it onto his belt. Again, going back to that little hook, and we'll just line the loop up, hook it onto the hook, and bingo bango, you've got yourself the lightsaber displayed on the figure. Again, I'm not really sure what this loop is for. Now, that may be a carryover for what we're going to be getting with future Lukes, or because the belt is something that maybe he uses in other places in the movie, that hook comes in handy. Still, for this figure, Doesn't make much sense to me why he's got that right there. The lightsaber is really highly detailed. The hilt, at least, you can see that they've painted in the little buttons there as well. It's got a nice metallic sort of chrome sheen to it with some black in the interior slotted areas of the handle, and then it's got some gold, some nice gold on the top there. Now there is a little hole on the top here because of course it's going to come with the actual beam of the saber. The blade simply just plugs into place and you've got yourself this. Now this, I think, could have been a little bit thicker. I don't feel as if it forms off, and I'm not going to be overly critical about this. I know, despite for the fact I may sound that way during this review. But I don't feel like the lightsaber points off as much as it does here. I feel, if anything, it stays the same consistent shape all the way around. I'm going to have to go back and look at the source material, but I do feel like it stays... It's as thick on this end as it is on this end, and it's just more a actual rod of light rather than something that peaks off. More accurately, a pointed off blade would make more sense, but going from the way it looks in the film, it does look as if it doesn't point off as much as it does here. This, by the way, is translucent, so obviously you can see my hand through it. And then there's also another variation as well, which is pretty cool. I haven't yet to see this with other of the Hot Toy releases, but he does come with the waving effect. Plugs in the lightsaber the exact same way, and then now you've got a fanned out swiping fashion, which has nice little speckling white, almost airbrushing on the top here, and is a little clearer at the bottom. It does give it that sense that it's glowing, even though technically it's not even turned on, nor is this something that you could light up. But it does look really neat here, especially getting the translucent effect underneath, or at least through it. If, however, you do want a light up option, Luke also comes with an interchangeable arm. I've already gone ahead and installed the 3 batteries that are required and also are included with the figure itself, and then you have your on and off switch right here. Switching it on, you'll see it projects a very bright green light. Now we'll go ahead and once again and add the beam. And adding the blade in place, you get a slight light up effect. It's not as effective, of course, with light source on. So let's go ahead and cut the lights and I'll show you what it looks like in the dark. The dark, you definitely see a big difference with the way it can light up. Now, that looks pretty cool. Now what I'm going to do is fish around in the dark. I'm going to pull this blade off, and I'm going to replace it with the one that swipes, so you can again see the difference of it. It's not as successful, I have to admit, and rather interesting. It lights up the very edge of the sweep and lights up down below, but it stays relatively dark in the middle here. So it is a really neat looking effect, not as successful, this one at least, in the dark. But we'll go ahead and just detach this. We'll put that to the side. I want to also switch this off, and I'm going to show you how to install this to the figure. This is extremely difficult. I'm going to say this right off the bat. It's a very tricky effect, a tricky feat to get the arm into the socket. Unfortunately, they have not given any sort of relaxed areas to the sleeve in which can be, because keeping in mind, you're going to have to fit this sleeve around this forearm. Me doing this enough times that the sleeve has relaxed a little bit. But at the very least, anything that would be interchangeable in the sense of an arm, why wouldn't they have Velcroed this? They could have put the Velcro right on the seam so that it would have just closed over itself and you could have opened it up completely to slide the arm through. That's simply not a case. You really, quite literally, have to yank the arm off and feed the arm back through the sleeve. Let me show you how that's done. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and pop the hand off. We don't really need that just yet. And I really hate a sight unseen removal of a limb, but we're going to go ahead, don't like doing this, going to go ahead and pop the hand, the arm, I should say, out of the socket. Literally, it's a sandwiched pin. So like let me just show you here. This is the socket for the bicep area. This is the arm here. You're literally just pulling it through on that. And again, I don't like doing this too often. The hard part is understanding where the give is on it to know where you're removing it. You can't even roll the sleeve up well enough either. That's as far up as it's really going to go. So there we go. We just pop. Don't like doing that. But there is the interchangeable arm. Now we have to go ahead and add the new arm. One thing I did find help when adding the arm is not putting it in straight. What ends up happening is the sleeve gets caught right around here, and it doesn't want to seem to go any further. So I found if you bent the elbow, even to about there, then feed it through Luke's arm, or at the very least his sleeve, and it sort of helps if you bend it because now it can get over that hinge. This is not something that may happen right away, but give it time, it will work. And then once it gets over that hinge, what I do is I take the sleeve and I hold onto the sleeve and I twist the arm. I twist the arm like this. And twisting the arm, I find, you're twisting the fabric, and as you can see, it slides right into the arm. Now we can go ahead, feel around to where that joint is. I just want to make the sleeve taut again. Find where the hinge is, make sure the elbow is bent again. And we're going to then attach the arm in place. Almost there. Again, the hardest part is just lining it up, because you can't see. You can't see what you're doing in there. There we go. Oh, almost got it. And, no, we almost got it. Unfortunately, I just had to pause the camera. It's a lot easier to hold it in hand than it is trying to reach over a camera to do it. But it does stay in place. Like I said, I've got the arm now in it. So again, when you are changing it, bend the elbow, work the joint through past the hinge of the elbow, and then just kind of twist the sleeve as you're moving it down the arm, and it does stay in place. Repeated times doing this, though, I have noticed that the sleeve has gotten loose. It's bound to happen, and as a result, it doesn't feel as fitted as it was before. They really should have avoided doing that altogether and just given us Velcro. Anyways, rolling the sleeve up, we can light up the lightsaber. And then we can go ahead and add the beam, or the blade. And then you've got Luke Skywalker now with the light up lightsaber. It's effective, it looks good, it's a lot of hassle to have to do that. And ultimately, when I end up displaying figures like this that have batteries, I myself always tread to the side of caution. I usually take the batteries out after I've reviewed a figure because I don't want the risk of them potentially leaking. Many people, sort of a 50-50 opinion of it, many people think that batteries won't leak when it comes to hot toys because they use a higher end battery. I have seen a lot of horror stories, I've heard horror stories, and I've seen online pictures in which the batteries have corroded. And I think just general rule of thumb as well is I always take the batteries out after I finish reviewing a figure because I just don't want the risk of something happening. The moment the batteries leak in there, it's pretty much game over, and then they're not going to work afterwards. Or at the very least, in the case of Luke's arm, it's not going to work anymore. For obvious reasons, for the way everything is set up, you can't remove the lightsaber, nor can you remove Luke's hand. So you're really relegated then to have to use the swapped out hand, swapped out arm, if you want to change any of the other accessories to this figure. To have a look at the rest of Luke's accessories, I ultimately just went ahead and changed the arm once again. I hope not having to do this very often. Again, I've ultimately relaxed the sleeve to the point where it's gotten really now just loose and flimsy. It definitely doesn't feel as tight as it was when I first got the figure. It's unfortunately a trade-off once again because I don't know why they just didn't cut a seam on the back. You could have rolled up the sleeve. Just a lot of the pulling out the arm, replacing a new arm. Yeah, the sleeve has gotten really loose as a result. Anyways, let's have a look at the rest of Luke's accessories. Of course, we've already had a look at his standalone lightsaber, but he does also include a blaster. The blaster is very nicely detailed. Cast primarily in black plastic with the handle area here painted in brown, and they've added the little rivet there in silver, and they've dry brushed a nice silver over top of that just to kind of give it that sense of wear. Luke also gets himself a generous amount of additional hands. Currently, I'm sporting him right now with the close fist exposed hand and the close fist gloved hand. Sadly, that's the only glove hand that he does come included with. To be fair, he does come also with the one that's attached to the electronic arm, but he doesn't come with any other gestured hands or anything like that with the glove intact, so that's a bit of a shame. But he does come with a pair of, for example, slightly relaxed hands. One is a little bit more exaggerated. Perhaps he's reaching out to Darth Vader, "Father, help me, please." Maybe he's reaching out with that. Or it could be also the Force hand. He's got a relaxed, just cupped hand, showing the 4 fingers running straight. He's got a couple of Jedi hands. And another Jedi hand. You could have on both sides, really. Also comes with a gripping hand for holding the blaster. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Put the blaster in place. And the finger, once lined up, the finger does fit over top of the blaster. This just so happens to be also the damaged hand, but he also has a variation that isn't damaged either. Now, they're essentially the same hand, although this one here is where he's on the Jabba skiff, the desert skiff ship, and he's shot in the hand there. You got that little exposed area with his artificial hand underneath. Oops, let's not drop that hand in the process. And then he's also just got a series of gripping hands, ideal for holding the lightsaber. Feeling as if I didn't spend enough time looking at the damaged hand, I just wanted to go back and look at it and show you guys a closer look at it. Really nice effect. You've got the, I guess it would be artificial blood around the area there, and then he's got the metal fingers inside there. Slightly a burned effect also around the outer area in which he would have been hit. This, of course, would be the scene where they're on the desert skiff. I always want to say skiffed, but it's S-K-I-F-F, skiff. But again, nice looking detailed hand. Of course, no Hot Toys would be complete with a series of, well, replaceable pegs. These always come in handy that if you take a hand out and accidentally break the peg, or sometimes if you just take a hand out and you get a stubborn peg that wants to go along with it, you could take yourself a pair of pliers and pop those back out, or you could just use these replacements, and they give you 2. Return of the Jedi, Luke's articulation is the following. His head rotates all the way around. It's to note as well that they've sculpted the neck to the head, so you're only getting 1 ball joint. If anything, it might be a double pegged ball joint, so one on the top, one at the bottom. That would be like a dumbbell bar ball joint, and then that would sit in the base of the neck and the base of the torso. And the head moves left and right, up and down, and you can rotate it left and right as well. Shoulders hinge outward. They do move forward and back. They're a little on the stiff side. I don't think that the fabric does anything to hinder the movement of the arms. They don't seem to get too tight around the seam area. They've kept this pretty relaxed, so you shouldn't have any problems with that. The arm swivels at the bicep. You've got a double hinge on the elbow, and then you got a rotation and hinge on the individual hands. The upper torso does have a crunch and a rotation on the waist, although the crunch is successful. The rotation in the waist, not so much. It does feel like it's really bunched up here. You've got a lot of the extra padding happening here, so it does limit what you can do with the waist. Finally, for the figure's legs, they split out. Forward and back. Gets a little tight here, I have to admit. Forward and back, out. He has a top swivel cut on the top portion of his thigh. Double hinge on the knee. And then the boots, despite, I guess that's one of the reasons why they kept the material so thin on the boot. I'm not crazy for the fact that they use such a thin material, but it does, at the very least, allow a hinge up and down on the feet. And you've also got an ankle rocker as well. In final looks, I find myself slightly torn when it comes to rating this particular figure. As a whole, I do like what they've done with the Luke Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi is one of my all-time favorite looks for the character, and it just so happens it's also my favorite lightsaber. I've always liked the green over the blue and the red. So I really went into this wanting to like the figure, and ultimately my walk away from this is it's a decent enough representation and rendition of Luke Skywalker. However, there's something very off on the face. Try as I might to look at it and figure out what exactly is missing on the face, or maybe it's just me. I find it's maybe around the area of the mouth that's throwing it off for me. Certain angles, it does look like Luke Skywalker, but there's something when you look at it straight on, seems off-putting to me. The only other thing I have really serious problems when it comes to this figure is the swapping out of the interchangeable arm. I'm certain for all the times that we've had interchangeable arm options, there's always been an easier method of doing it than having to literally roll up the sleeve as high up as you could get it, and then yanking the arm out, and then doing your best to feed the sleeve back over the existing arm. Why oh why they didn't put just simply a slit in the sleeve and use Velcro as the means to get an easy access to the sleeve itself. Even rolling up the sleeve, because you have to do that to turn on the lightsaber, has ultimately caused the fabric to become very relaxed and loose on the figure's arms. And I really didn't want that, because I know in the movie the sleeves at the very least are very tight on the character, and now ultimately I have slightly loose sleeves on this particular figure. So despite those two flaws, the face sculpt and the swapping of the arm, I do like the figure as a whole. I like the interchangeable options that he has. The light up lightsaber is always a nice touch to include with a figure. So I think my walk away from this is I would recommend the figure, but I don't think he's 100% perfect. The head sculpt could have been slightly tweaked a little bit better, and I think in this case, I think changing out the arm should have been a lot easier than what it ultimately came across with, or what it ultimately had to be. Just as a side note as well, Hot Toys usually hires sculptors to sculpt the faces. I know it's all obviously a big debatable topic of using scans for some of the actors. A lot of people feel like the craft gets lost, but I feel as a collector, I almost would have favored a scan, even though it obviously would be harder to do with an older Mark Hamill, but I think a scan gives us a more accurate read. Sometimes artist renditions of what they interpret a figure head sculpt to look like could drastically be different than what collectors see the faces as, and maybe that's the problem here with Luke Skywalker. Maybe the artist who sculpted the face saw that that face needed to look this way, and again, I'm looking at it, it seems like something is slightly off on it. Either way though, if you're interested in picking this one up for yourself, you should be able to find it now on Sideshow Collectibles. I think it's currently on a pre-order. This was, by the way, product code MMS429. Today we were having a look at the Hot Toys Star Wars Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. If you guys haven't had a chance, I should say, to go back and have a look at some of my other Hot Toys figure reviews, there's a playlist just for you. Also, make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below. Lots more videos will be coming your way. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.